Hey everybody, how are we all doing today? This is some Christian guy. Welcome back. You can find me, before we start, Facebook, on One Way, and on YouTube. Just go over and you guys will find me. So today we're going to be discussing the second objection, the second Bible contradiction that atheists believe to be the case, right? So let us quickly go to the source. Right, we have it over here. Was Abraham justified by faith or by works? Right, this is the question. They believe that there is a contradiction here because in the one it says he is justified by faith, and in the other one he says it's justified by works. And so the argument is, right, that because one says faith and the other one says works, that this is a contradiction. So as far as the atheist is concerned, we need to choose. Well, is it one or the other? Now the reason I'm laughing is because this subject, first of all, I'm not surprised to see this question here. The reason for that is because not only do atheists not understand this particular issue of faith and works, but as far as I can tell, the vast majority of Christians today don't even understand this faith versus works issue. It is a massive debate within the Christian church, massive debate. And as far as I'm concerned, now I'm no Einstein, I'm not professing to be Mr. Smart or anything like that, right? But it's not a difficult thing to understand, right? At all, right? It's not a difficult issue. But yet, so many Christians still don't get this right. It's unbelievable, and it essentially and basically people fall on one of two sides, either on the side of total liberalism or antinomianism, right? Which basically is, let's get rid of the law and everything that we're expected to do, right, which is works, right? And they say, oh, if you obey the 10 commandments, that's works righteousness. No, it's obedience, right? It's like, just because you're a Christian doesn't mean now you can magically murder, right? Okay, so the 10 commandments are still there. And then you get other people who basically believe that by doing good deeds they earn their way to heaven, and then grace, God's grace then becomes a side issue. So it would basically, so people who argue for works salvation, basically it's almost like someone standing before a judge. Let's say you murdered someone, right? And you're standing before the judge and you expect to get let off because, well, listen, judge, yeah, okay, I admit I killed this person, but look at all the other people I didn't kill. How good was that? And I give to charity, and I give to the SPCA, and I bought my mother a very nice birthday present. Look at all these good works I have. Do you think that's going to fly with a judge? Of course not. You're going to jail, right? Because the fact that you've done good stuff doesn't make up for what you've done wrong. That's why we need grace, okay? So it's hilarious. So this whole argument rages on to this day. And it's so simple to get your head around it that I don't know why, but maybe people are just ridiculous. I don't know what it is. Anyway, let's go to the biblical verses, right? Because they list it, and so we're going to go to it. It's in Romans and in James, right? So it is Romans. Let's have a look here. Sorry, we're starting in James first. James 2 verse 21, right? So it says here, right, and it does say this, so they're right, they're at least reading the verse correctly. Was not Abraham our father justified by works when he had offered Isaac up on his altar? So it certainly seems like James is indicating that you are justified by works in this particular verse. Yeah, fair enough. So let's go to Romans. It's Romans 4 verse 2. For if Abraham were justified by works, he hath whereof to glory, but not before God. Right? So he's basically saying, the opposite, right? He's talking about faith. Okay, so how do we resolve this? I apologize if I'm laughing and I'm finding this amusing, but it proves the point that so forgetting about the Christian stupidity, right, revolving around it, it shows that the atheist has no clue what he's talking about either. He clearly doesn't understand what's going on in here. So he brings this up as if it's as if as if this doctrine wasn't settled like 2,000 years ago. Okay, this doctrine has been settled during the apostolic age already. This issue was sorted out. It's only, and the church fathers and everyone got it right, and it's like, this has been settled before. The fact that people still argue over it is because human beings are morons. Okay, anyway, so how do we figure this out? How do we sort this out? Okay, so now let's go to the board, shall we? So you've got one. So James, right, it looks like he is saying that we are justified by by grace. Let me just make sure of the context here. Let me read those again. Right, 21. Right, by works. Okay, and then in Romans, right, so James was written, the book of James written by James, the brother of Jesus, and then Romans is the Apostle Paul. Romans is the Apostle Paul, and he reckons, right, grace. He champions grace. Interestingly enough, Martin Luther actually had a problem with this. If I'm not mistaken, he actually called the book of James the Epistle of Straw, right? Oh, no, sorry. Was it James? One of them. Okay, I can't remember what, but Martin Luther had a problem trying to reconcile this faith and works issue as well, and he was a big champion of the whole grace thing. And the whole idea that, and it was James. So he called James the Epistle of Straw because he couldn't understand this works business, right? Why is James a firm? So it definitely looks like, but even so, even as recently as 500 years ago, this was reconciled by Martin Luther. Okay, so if people are making issues of it, it's because they're being ridiculous. Okay, now. Let's do this quickly. Let's go back to the verses, and I'm going to show you something in the verses quickly, right? So here's the great irony, okay? Here's the great irony. If you read in Romans, right, if Abraham were justified by works, for what says Scripture, Abraham believed God and was counted him for righteousness, and you've got a whole treatise, right, in Romans, okay? This whole treatise on grace, and this whole treatise here, right, in James on works, and both of them talk. So for example, right, let's go just a few verses and this shows the stupidity of whoever's bringing up these of whoever came up with this contradiction, right? It just shows the stupidity that if the person is not reading. It's like, thou believest that there is one God, thou doest well. So he's like, you believe in God, good for you. The devils also believe. So it's, yeah, all right, great, you believe in God, but the devil also believes God exists, right? But wilt thou know, O vain man, that faith without works is dead. So does James address faith, right? Yes. James is actually talking about faith as well, okay? Faith without works is dead. So is he saying over here that one or the other? There is no one or the other in this verse, okay? James is not saying it's one or the other. Right? So in the verse, if you actually read the entire chapter, which this atheist individual clearly didn't bother to bloody well read, James puts no dialectical tension between faith and works, none whatsoever. He's basically saying that faith, right? Faith without works, so if you separate them, that faith is then useless, right? Faith and works. So here's the Christian doctrine, basically the proper Christian doctrine, how to reconcile these, because in Romans, when the Apostle Paul is talking about grace, at no point, if you read the entire chapter, and if you actually read the full book of Romans, he also never, well, he's talking about grace, and he talks about faith and grace, right, is sort of his main points, but he never puts it in a dialectical opposition, he never puts a dialectic tension between works and grace and faith, right? Now, the Christian creed is we're saved by, all right, so here's the Christian the proper creed, right? We're saved by grace. Yeah. Let's start again, shall we? Basically, it's that you hear, right? So, saved by grace, right? Through faith unto good works. All of them are required, right? Because if we go back to my courtroom instance, right? Dear judge, I've committed this crime. Can you please let me off because I've done good things? The judge is going to tell you to get lost. The only way you can be saved is through is by God's grace. That is it. That is it. Right? But obviously, if you don't have faith in God and his grace and what he's done, if you don't even believe God exists, how are you going to claim the grace that he has offered you? Right? It's like I'm going to come to your house and I'm going to give you some money, right? And you tell, oh, I don't believe you exist. Well, you can't, how are you going to receive anything from me? Which is why we say that grace is a free gift from God, right? We don't deserve it, right? We don't deserve it, which affirms the fact that works does not save us, okay? But works is a consequence of the salvation through faith. It's a consequence. So if you can't claim to be a Christian if you're still going around murdering people. It's that simple, right? So your actions needs to reflect, it's a simple doctrine. Your actions need to reflect what you believe. It's literally that simple, right? So a Christian who goes around breaking the 10 commandments is not a Christian, right? It's a farce. They're pretending, right? It is literally that simple. Okay, I'm a football player, right? I'm a world famous football player. But if you literally never see me ever on a football pitch, what's that gonna tell you about me? It says I'm lying, okay? It means I'm obviously not a football player, right? So all of these things, you grasp, right? You grasp faith, grace with faith by believing in God, by believing in the merits of Jesus Christ and the work that he did for you, etc., etc., etc. And because you have that saving grace through faith, because of all of that, you will then perform good works because you are converted, you are renewed, etc., etc., right? And you then do decent things. You become a good citizen. You stop being an idiot and a nuisance to everyone around you. Basically, well, at least you try, okay? So we're always accessing grace because we're miserable and stupid, all right? We do wrong things all the time. So we always need the grace and the forgiveness. It's always there, the grace and forgiveness of God. And if we have faith in the system, in God, in Jesus, we're going to try and do our best to live lives accordingly. So the Bible's got another verse where it says, by their fruits you will know them. It's quite simple. How do you know an apple tree is an apple tree? Well, because it bears apples. Okay, it's the same way. How do you know if a person is one thing and does something else? You immediately know that there's something wrong, something is amiss. You'd say that they're lying, you call them a hypocrite, you call them two-faced, double standards, and so on and so forth. And that's basically what it's talking about. There is no contradiction here, right? The only difference is one of emphasis. So essentially speaking, if you want to be really technical about it, it is something that's called a bifurcation fallacy or a false dilemma, okay? the individual here, whoever this atheist individual is that came up with this nonsense, right? He's created a false dilemma between works and faith, a false dilemma between grace, faith, works, and so on and so forth. It's a bifurcation fallacy. He has split into two things which should and must go together, right? In the Christian life, faith and works go together. You cannot have one, because James clearly says, right, faith without works is dead. Works without faith is pointless, is absolutely pointless, right? Because if you don't believe, so if you've got faith but no works, you're a hypocrite, okay? Basically, because as James said, even even Satan believes that God exists, okay? Literally literally one argument you never hear from Satan, right, is, does God exist, right? He believes God exists, you know, he's got this same belief, okay? But what are Satan's works? Well, he's a miserable son of a gun. He's the father of lies, the agent of death, essentially, right? That's what he is. So his works are a problem, okay? So, but works, you can do as much good stuff as you want, right? You can be literally the best most wonderful person on earth, right? But if you don't have faith in the salvation plan, right? So if you don't believe in God, then why are you bothering to be good in the first place? there's no point, okay? Essentially speaking. And this actually ties in to the whole argument between atheists and Christians, is like, can we be good without God? Yes, you can be good without God. That's a completely idiotic thing. Can we be good without? Of course you can, right? Atheists are good all the time, okay? I know some really, really awesome atheists, you know, better than a lot of Christians that I know. They are so fantastic, such fantastic, genuine, down-to-earth people, right? The question is, if you're an atheist, why do you bother? You've got no reason, right, outside of your own personal whatever, but you have no reason, if you're an atheist, to believe that as an atheist, you have no reason to believe in the category of good works. There is no, in pure naturalism, right? In pure naturalism, there is no category of good works out there, and objective moral reality, etc., etc. Nature is just nature, right? Red in tooth and claw, you know, if you survive, hey, well then go ahead, you know. If your tribe can do it, then might as well go ahead, right? So, and it's up to you as an individual, right? You're not, so any morality that you get is not an objective thing. It's whatever you as an individual or a group or a society or a committee or whatever it is decides it to be. It's like inventing, it's literally like, so for atheism, morality is basically like inventing a game. It's like, this is the game we want to play, right? And these are the rules, and these are the rules of the game, right? It's not objective. You're just making up whatever game you collectively decide to play. That's it on atheism. So there's this category of good works is completely meaningless if you have no faith in. If God doesn't exist, the category of good works doesn't exist. It's meaningless. It's ridiculous. All you have are arbitrary rules because you've said, what, we want to play this game over here, and so these are the rules of that particular game. So your life and your society is basically run in the same manner you would run a sports game or anything else. The only difference, it's a bit more complex, right? So you've got your system of laws and stuff, but at no point is it objective, right? So if tomorrow everyone in society, from the president all the way down, changed their minds and decided murder is great, we'd stop doing it. You know, on atheism, there's no reason you couldn't. If everyone agreed that it was a great idea, then that's it. You know, fair enough. So this whole thing in Christianity, it all goes together. If you have faith if you are a Christian, if you are converted, if you have received the Holy Spirit, Christ's salvation, etc., all of those good things, right? Your baptism and so on and so forth, you are going to live your life accordingly. It's that simple. If your life does not reflect your faith, there is a problem. There is a problem with you. There is a problem with the way you've understood it. So, for example, and you see this a lot today, right? People out there, oh, I'm a Christian, and they're claiming to be a Christian, right? Yet they still go out and they get drunk all the time, right? Or they go out and they cheat, or they go out and they support the LGBT community, or they go out and they support most of the politics that's out there, whether it's left or right. Most of politics today is just evil. Not that Christians should avoid politics altogether, but most Christians, they just go out and blindly follow politicians. They're following the morality of the politicians rather than following the morality of God, right? It's what the politicians say, and off they go. So the Christians out there are saying, yeah, we believe, but their lives do not reflect that. And interestingly enough, that's one of the main reasons, in my opinion, one of the main reasons that atheists become atheists. It's the reason I became an atheist, is because you have many Christians who say they're Christians but behave like a bunch of idiots and do not reflect the Christian life, do not properly reflect their faith in their lives, right? And no one likes a hypocrite. Absolutely no one likes, not even an atheist, even though they have no objective reason to dislike hypocrisy. Even atheists despise hypocrisy, right? So this idea, was Abraham justified by faith, or was he justified by good works? The answer is both, because we're talking about justification here. We're not talking about salvation, okay? Justification means, are you right before God? Are you doing the right things? Are you justified because of his faith in God unto good works? So Abraham obeyed God and did everything. So his faith brought about good works. His works reflected his faith, and therefore the whole thing was imputed to him as righteousness, and he was saved because he accepted God and his salvation. And it's that simple. You can't divorce the three: grace, faith, works. They all go together. Right? And if you separate one from the other, you're going to have a nonsensical, idiotic religion, right? And there are plenty of those out there, even within the Christian denominations, right? There's a lot of Christian denominations out there who basically espouse flat out antinomianism. Antinomianism basically means against the law. I think it's Greek, right? Against the law. They're antinomians. So you have a lot of Christians that go out there and say, oh, well, now I'm saved because I've got faith in Christ. Now I can go fornicate and be polyamorous and stuff like that. Actually, there was this one guy, a so-called Christian, right, who is apparently a gay pastor or whatever sort of thing. And I watched this video, and he's basically saying that polyamory is okay. And he went so far as to say that Jesus Christ was polyamorous. This person's not a Christian. It's end of story. He's some deluded idiot, basically, is what he is, this guy, right? To go as far as to say that Jesus was polyamorous, that's blasphemy. That's just you're just toying with some dangerous stuff or there, honestly. I couldn't believe what I was hearing from this idiot. And idiots like that are a dime a dozen, okay? Who, oh, I'm a Christian, but I'm gonna now rationalize the lifestyle that I want to live, right? They're referencing themselves. It is they're not following God and what he says there. It's a self-reference. It's what I want and what I believe is right, and because that's what I believe, I'm then going to pretend that the Bible agrees with me. It's totally moronic, and it's nothing new. People have been doing this since the beginning. Since the apostolic age, people have been doing it, right? Which is precisely why these things were written. why Paul took the time to write this, why James took the time to write this, because even in their day, people, for whatever reason, were confused about this issue, right? So, to conclude, do we have a contradiction? No, we do not. Contradiction number 2, debunked. Okay, nonsense, rubbish. Don't even know. The person literally just needed to read the two chapters, because the irony is that they pulled out verses from chapters which were designed to explain the very issue. All right, so if they bothered to read it, they would have understood it. Okay, so ridiculous. Oh, one more point also. One of the Bible in other places, when it's sort of elaborating on the whole thing, it also says that human beings are justified by works before other human beings. The reason being is, as human beings, we do not have access to a person's mind and a person's heart. So I cannot assess an individual's mind and heart because there's no direct access to it. So therefore, the only way I can assess an individual's mind and heart is through their actions, right? Through what they say, through what they do. Do they lead a Christian life, so on and so forth? And if they do, then I have... So as human beings with each other, we are justified by works with each other. But with God, because God sees the heart, it requires not just the works, obviously, because God is interested in whether you actually do the right thing and lead a Christian lifestyle, but God himself, because he has access to the heart and mind, you are then justified by faith, and then the two go together. But with human beings in general, because we don't have that access, we sort of justify ourselves before each other by being good Christians, good citizens, and so on and so forth. So there is that issue there. The whole thing, it's subtle, it's rich, it's not just either or all the time, And again, and I'll say this again, as Christians, we avoid dialectics, right? We avoid dialectics, and the Western mindset is always to create false dilemmas between... Our entire political system is like that, left and right. It's this constant left or right. It's like, stop with the dialectics, stop with the nonsense, right? And it's left and right, male versus female, black versus white, gay versus straight, everything versus everything else. It's never ending tension. Never ending tension. And the Christian lifestyle is to try and avoid that as much as possible, right? Try and avoid that as much as possible. And the only time we get into a dialectical tension with anything is when what people are presenting goes against the law of God. And that's the only time we should ever step up and be like, hey, this is an issue, that's a bit of a problem. But then also not in this hysterical, ridiculous fashion like a lot of people go. I get a lot of Christians going out and in the streets with picket boards and just making a nuisance of themselves. That's not winsome. That's not how you get people to look at you. Yeah, you're out there with a placard, kill the gay people, in some redneck accent or something like that. It's like, do you honestly think you're going to convert anyone like that? If you're out there shouting, kill the gay people, whatever the case might be, to hell with the sinners and whatever else, down with the fornicators. It's like, no one's going to look at you and think, oh wow, what a nice winsome religion that is, I'm going to take part in it. Come on, it's not how it goes. So you got to establish relationships with people and stuff like that, get in a proper dialogue, be friends with people, how about actually caring about people for a change, sort of thing. It's and even if the people, like we disagree, like with homosexuality and stuff like that, doesn't mean you go and hate these people either, you know what I mean? God loves them as well, right? It's, I'm a sinner, right? I'm a sinner. I struggle. My one of my weaknesses is aggression, right? I can be very aggressive. It's something my wife has been wonderful to try and tone down and stuff like that. You're gonna hate me now just because I have this weakness? No, we don't hate each other because of these things, right? We acknowledge that everyone has their struggles in life, and we try to help each other out. You know, that's the way to go. Even if we disagree with each other, help each other out. You don't go and fight. Nonsense, man. Unbelievable. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, I hope this helped you out. Till next time, cheerio. God bless.